Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining in the message today. Our prayer is that it would strengthen you and encourage you in your faith. And if it does that, please consider sharing this content so we can continue to spread the good news into our communities, to our friends and our families, and all around the world for Jesus. And if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, then please introduce yourself via our website, which is victorymj.com, or send us an email at connect@victorymj.com. We can also have the conversation on social media. Just look for Victory Church MJ and you'll find us on all the social platforms. Thanks again for joining us. Blessings. Now let's head into the message.
So a generation before us, a guy named James Allan Francis wrote an essay, or maybe it's a poem. It's called One Solitary Life. I want to start today by reading it. It's about Jesus. It says, he, Jesus, was born in an obscure village. He was the child of a peasant. He grew up in another village where he worked in a carpenter shop until he was 30. And then for 3 years, he was an itinerant preacher. He never wrote a book. He never held an office. He never had a family or owned a home. He didn't go to college. He never lived in a big city. He never even traveled 200 miles from the place where he was born. He did none of the things that usually accompany greatness. He had no credentials but himself. He was only 33 when the tide of public opinion turned against him. His friends ran away. One of them denied him. He was turned over to his enemies and went through the mockery of a trial, then was nailed to a cross between two thieves. And while he was dying, his executioners gambled for his garments, and that was the only property he had on earth. And when he was dead, he was laid in a borrowed grave through the pity of a friend. Doesn't sound great, does it? But listen to this. 20 centuries have come and gone. And today he is, that guy we just talked about, all those things that don't seem very magnificent, he is the central figure of the human race. I am well within the mark when I say that all the armies that ever marched, and all the navies that ever sailed, and all the parliaments that ever sat, and all the kings that ever reigned, put together, have not affected the life of man on this earth as much as that one solitary life. It's amazing to think of the influence that just one life can have. And considering Jesus, that is infinitely true. It's also true in all of our lives. We have significant influence over one another. And as we look at Jesus, the greatest teacher, I want you to think about teachers for a second. Teachers seem to have kind of a disproportionate influence on our lives. And most of us can think of a teacher that has had big influence on our lives, sometimes for good or bad. I want you just to think for a minute of one teacher that you can think of who you would say has made a big positive difference on your life. Maybe you'd even put them in the comments or say why you think a teacher has positive influence. For me, it was Miss Vandenborn. When I was in elementary school, honestly, I was a brat. And I actually built this identity around being a brat. You've met kids like this. I thought I was being cool. And I actually intentionally wanted to torment my teachers. That was kind of part of my persona and part of my own identity. And every teacher has a few kids that I think that probably they dread teaching. And I saw myself as that kid. And I know you now see me as this wonderful preacher who, is probably just perfectly innocent. Wow. Anyway, but back in grade 4, that was the deal. And Miss Vandenborn saw through my persona, saw through that deal. And she saw that, she saw past it, I guess. And somehow she let me know that. And it's not that she never got me in trouble. I mean, when I was misbehaving, she'd deal with it. But there was somehow that she let me know that she knew that wasn't all there was to me, that wasn't the real me. And it was as if outside of those behavioral moments, it was as if I knew that Miss Vandenborn actually liked me, that she actually cared about me in spite of my bad behavior. And it really did kind of blow me away as this little kid, this little bratty kid. And because of that, because of the way she treated me and cared, and because of the way she saw through that persona, she became my favorite teacher that I ever had to this day. She will forever be my favorite teacher. In fact, just a while back, I saw on a Facebook post that she was retiring 37 years. And I got the opportunity to write her a little note and just say, Miss Vandenborn, I believe that God brought you into my life at a significant moment, and you made a significant difference in my life. So you can think in your own mind, what was a teacher who made a significant difference in your life? Well, Jesus, he's the greatest teacher of all time. And of course, that means that he makes a significant difference in our lives. But this idea of Jesus as teacher is not a term that we hear a whole lot. We hear the term often, Jesus is Lord or Savior or Master or Redeemer. But teacher, you're like, oh, okay, I get it, I guess. But actually, when you read the Bible, and this is fairly new for me to really research this out, Jesus is referred to 90 times by somebody else. Somebody walks up to Jesus and talks to him. 60 out of those 90 times, he is teacher. He's rabbi. 60 times out of the 90 times in the Gospels. And the fact is that people of his day were amazed. They were in awe at the teaching of Jesus. And that's actually saying something, because there was a lot of teachers in Jesus' day, and teachers were very highly revered. Which, let me just pause for a second and say this. I'm not sure we appreciate and honor teachers as much as we ought to. I started this sermon by saying, we should give honor where honor is due. Let me encourage you today, at some point, to pause and say thank you to a teacher. Would you do that? This year has been a tough year for teachers, and so if you know somebody who's been teaching this year, would you send them a note of thanks and just honor them, appreciate them, let them know you appreciate the influence that they have? Okay. That's an aside. Let's come back to Jewish culture. In Jewish culture, teachers were extremely highly revered. Part of the reason is because in Jewish culture, the Torah guided all of life, and the rabbis, the teachers of that day, were to instruct the people around the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. Now, children learned this right from, the day they could understand. In fact, by the time a child was 6 to 10 years old, they would have the entire Torah memorized. Isn't that incredible? 5 books of the Bible. A 10-year-old child would be able to recite those. And if a child excelled in their schooling, they often would learn to recite the entire Old Testament. The entire Old Testament, word for word. This is quite a phenomenal thing. Well, when a rabbi saw a student who was excelling in that way, and he also saw something special in that student, one of the most special, one of the most honoring, one of the most incredible days for a student would be the day that a rabbi went to a student and said, you have not only excelled as a student, but I think you might be able to excel as a teacher. I would like you to become one of my own disciples. One of my disciples. I'd like you to follow me, was the term they would use. And so when Jesus came on the scene, and he was a teacher, a rabbi, and he walked up to these guys who actually weren't the cream of the crop. They weren't the top of their class. They were probably more like the high school dropouts of their day. And when he walked up to them and said, I'd like you to follow me, that was an incredible honor, an incredible honor. He just said, follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. Remember that? And there's this, I see you've got what it takes. I see a world changer in you. Pretty incredible. And of course, that call, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men, Jesus taught his disciples that that call was going to be a call not just for a handful of people, but that was going to be a call that resounded to the whole world from the heart of God through Jesus Christ. That Jesus invites anyone and everyone who will to come and be his students, to come and be his disciples, to come and follow him, and in turn, to be world changers, to be fishers of men, to actually be transformed as his students, and then to become, if we can fathom it, teachers like he is, to use our lives as influencers. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take some time together just to try to grasp what it means for Jesus to be the greatest teacher of all time. We're going to look at it in a macro sense. There's been hundreds of books written about this. There's been hundreds of articles about what is Jesus, this great teacher. But here's what I'm hoping. As we look at this, I'm hoping that a few things will happen. One is that you will say, I want to be a disciple of this guy. I'm one of his students. and that you'll further grasp what it means to be his follower, his disciple, his student. If you already are his student, then you'd further step into that. And if you aren't his student yet, that you'd heed that invitation and choose to be his follower. And then I'm hoping beyond that, as you gaze on the wonder of that your own heart would be transformed, that you and I would become more like our teacher, and we would take on these characteristics that he has. One of the sayings back in Jewish times when Jesus had his disciples, one of the blessings that would be given to a disciple was, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. Such a great phrase. May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. And it just meant, may you follow your rabbi so closely. May you apprentice under him so closely that he rubs off on you, that your life begins to look like his life, that you would be that kind of student. So I'm going to give you 4 things. Here they are. Number 1, the greatest teacher of all time taught with loving invitation, what I would call a come and see kind of teaching. John 14:23 is this beautiful verse that Jesus uses when he's giving this intimate teaching with his disciples near the end of his ministry. And it's central to these 3 chapters, John 14, 15, and 16, which are teaching words of Jesus. And this is what he says: anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. There he is, he's a teacher. You obey his teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. And you can see this teaching is saturated in the context of a love relationship. Jesus was a master at creating an environment that was conducive to learning and to growth. And he let his disciples know that he loved them, and he invited their love in return. He was a teacher who was full of grace. And it's amazing when you read through the Gospels and you see how Jesus interacts with people, and he displays this amazing empathy and care and concern for every single individual. And that's important when it comes to teaching, because teaching really is influence. That's what teaching is. When we teach someone else, we're influencing them. And when you are being invited to be taught, you want to know what you're asking? When somebody offers to teach you, the question you ask is, can I trust this person has my best interest at heart? Right? Do I really believe that to the core of my being? Do I believe that this person is for me, they care for me, or are they just doing what's best for themselves? It's actually the number 1 question we ask when we're thinking about leaders or influencers or certainly teachers in our lives. And Jesus made it clear from the get-go that he was for us, that he was for his disciples, that everything he was teaching them was for their good, for their benefit, that he was there laying down his life for them. And the way he did that, in part at least, was to say, this is an invitation. I'm not forcing this on you. I'm not cramming this truth down your throat. I'm inviting you into the adventure, into the excitement, into the wonder of this. And that invitation into the wonder of learning, into the wonder of transformation, and into the wonder of growth, that invitation was not so much an invitation into sort of a comfortable life where Jesus would coddle you and take care of you. Actually, Jesus as a teacher kept his disciples off balance. Do you notice that when you read through his teachings? He keeps you kind of always guessing, always wondering, always being challenged. He'd say, you used to think it was this way, but actually it's like this. And you think the world works like this, but actually it works like that. And here's a vision of the way the world could be. And here's a vision of the way your life could look. If only you would embrace that, and if only you'd follow this, and if only you'd go down this path. There's this wonderful sense of being invited into God's story in the teaching of Jesus and being invited into transformation. There's this great time early on in the book of John where a guy named John the Baptist has his own disciples, and he sees Jesus and he says to his disciples, he says, hey guys, that is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And that's quite a statement. And he actually says, when it comes to teachers, you know, I'm a good rabbi to you disciples, but I don't hold a candle to that guy. That is the greatest teacher of all. And John the Baptist's disciples are smart guys. They're not just going to, sit around and stick with John the Baptist. They turn right then and they start following Jesus. These 2 guys start following Jesus. And this is what it says, John 1, verse 38. Jesus looked around and saw them following. What do you want? He asked them. I just love that. You know, it's like you're walking along and there's two guys just coming right up along behind you, right? You're like, whoa, what's up, guys? What do you want? Look how they reply. Rabbi, which means teacher. You see what they're saying there? You're our teacher. We just heard from our teacher that you're the greatest teacher. So we're coming up. Where are you staying? We want to get around you. We want to learn from you. And I love Jesus' answer. Come and see, he said. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They went to the place he was staying, and they remained with him the rest of the day. Come and see. It's actually a phrase that gets used a couple more times in the book of John to just say, Jesus' invitation is a come and see invitation. And Jesus was able to draw out of people and invite people in. He was able to see what was good in them, to call that out, and to see some of the things he needed to challenge in them, some of their hearts and motives. Jesus treated each person like an individual. One of the amazing things Jesus does in the Gospels in his teaching is he asks questions. You know, in the Gospels, Jesus asks 307 questions of people. It's incredible. And so he creates this environment that's filled with love and filled with growth, but that's also kind of keeping you off balance, inviting you into more, inviting you into transformation, inviting you to be challenged. And that really leads us to the second thing. So there's this loving invitation, come and see, but from there is a truth-filled implementation. A truth-filled implementation, or what I would call come and follow. Come and follow. See, Jesus didn't hide this at all in his teaching. He expected his followers, his disciples, his students to obey his teaching, right? He just says it flat out. He never minces words on this, and he says it over and over again. I don't know about you, but I've encountered some teachers who it almost feels like all they think their job is to do is to disseminate the information, and then they've done their part. And it's like whether you learned or not is your problem. And it's almost like they don't care at all whether the students really learn or really live what they've learned. Jesus has the opposite spirit to this. Jesus desperately wants every student of his not just to get his teaching, but to live his teaching. And Jesus is radically action-oriented. I think this is part of the reason why Jesus uses so much story and illustration and emotion in his teaching, because he's like, guys, this is for real. This is real life. This is not just a set of principles or a set of ideas or a set of doctrines. This is a set of commands that are expected to be obeyed. This is a path for you that you need to walk in. And Jesus just keeps saying, don't just hear my teaching. Doing it is where the blessing is. And one time he says, don't call me Lord if you're not going to do what I say. And he never flinched from telling us there was a price to that. One time he said, look, there's a wide road. It's easy, it's the comfortable road, and there's a lot of people on that road. And you know the truth is, it leads to destruction. It'll wreck your life. And if you want to follow me, it's actually a narrow road. And it's a difficult path. But guess what? It leads to life. I want you to have life. I want you to have joy. This is the path. And there's a price along that path. One of the verses that was so foundational for me on my early journey as a disciple was Luke 9:23. Jesus says to the group that's there, he says, whoever wants to be my disciple, my student, must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. Now, along with this sense of implementation and paying the price and walking in obedience, and clearly this is going to have to be lived out, along with all of that, there is a strong sense that Jesus is going to tell them the truth, and he's going to tell them the whole truth, right? One pastor I heard this week, his name is Dave Dummett, he said this: a teacher can be likable, funny, and charismatic, but if they aren't teaching the truth, they're not a good teacher, right? And Jesus, again and again, even though sometimes his teaching isn't popular, even though sometimes his teaching makes people mad, he keeps on saying, look, my teaching isn't mine. What I'm teaching you comes from the Father. This is not just a set of opinions. This is not just a set of ideas. This is the truth. He says, I came to testify the truth. One time he says, I actually held nothing back from the truth to my disciples. And again, this didn't always make Jesus popular. Jesus' teachings were revolutionary. They were countercultural. And of course, they still are today. The teachings of Jesus includes things we love to hear, but it also includes things we don't love to hear. And Jesus taught us to love our enemies. He taught us to live in radical forgiveness. When Jesus taught on sex, he didn't just say sex outside of marriage is a problem. He said even the thought, even lust, is damaging and destructive to your soul. One time, I think one of the most radical moments of Jesus was in that same chapter, John 14, when he says this. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. You know, a lot of us read a verse like that and we almost cringe, like, Jesus, couldn't you have held back a little bit on that one? You're the way to the Father. Nobody gets to God except through you, Jesus. Isn't that a bit exclusive? Isn't that a bit maybe arrogant? Doesn't that come across like, does that offend a little bit? And the answer is, if it's true, it's the most loving thing he can say. And he's not going to hold back from giving you his love. So if we want to be covered in the dust of our rabbi, part of the challenge is we have to grapple with all the teachings of Jesus. We have to implement them into our daily lives. We can't just say, yeah, I'll learn them, but we have to say, I'll live them. And we have to count the cost to that. And then we have to say, and you know what? All the teachings of Jesus, the ones I like, and some of those ones that might be a little more countercultural. Okay, so there's loving invitation, come and see. There's truth-filled implementation, come and follow. Then there's personal transformation, come and be with. I love how the end of this verse goes in John 14:23. We will come to them and make our home with them. You see, Jesus' goal is a relationship. Jesus' goal is that our lives and his life would be caught up together. Jesus as a teacher was not just interested in an hour a week in a classroom. Jesus as a teacher wants to apprentice you and me in every moment of our lives. In fact, the be with theme of Jesus as a teacher is probably the greatest theme, the most common theme. The promise, I will be with you, that's the most common promise in all the Bible. And it's the biggest theme in Jesus' teaching simply because of this. You were made for a relationship with God, and Jesus came so that you and I could have that relationship. And it's actually in the midst of that relationship, life on life, that real transformation happens. Great teachers know this, that teaching isn't just about talking, it's about investing our lives. The best teachers know that it's not just what they teach, it's who they are, and it's what they model, it's the example they set. Now, one of the ways I love to say this is, parents especially, we teach what we know, but we reproduce what we are, right? That's why when we see our kids, doing stuff, and we're like, where'd you learn to talk like that? Or where'd you learn to behave like that? And then we think, I think I know exactly where they learned that, right? We look in the mirror, Well, Jesus was willing not just to teach things, but to set the example, to model the love, to model the sacrifice, to model the serving. Jesus was completely free from hypocrisy. And he didn't just inform, he built that relationship and cared for and loved those he taught and invested in them. And it was in the midst of the relationship that people experienced that transformation. So there's loving invitation, come and see. Truthful implementation, come and follow. There's personal transformation, come and be with. And then the last one, there's purposeful multiplication. Wow, that's a lot of words there. That's some big words. Go and make disciples. Go and make disciples. And of course, this is how Jesus started with his students, right? Follow me and I will make you fishers of men. And it's how he finished with his students. We call this the Great Commission. It's in Matthew chapter 28. Jesus came and told his disciples, or his students, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples, make students of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching these new disciples to what? What are they going to do? The same as I taught you, to obey all the commands I have given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. The students become teachers. And that's kind of a scary thought for all of us, right? The disciples are called to make disciples. Part of following Jesus as teacher is that now we have a responsibility to teach others. We have a responsibility to take these same principles that Jesus lived and to live them, that we in our lives, with those that we get the opportunity to influence, offer loving invitations to others and say, hey, come and see, come and see. And we pursue people with these truthful challenges and say, you know what, we're going to speak the truth. And it might be hard to hear, but we want you to live and implement the truth, the paths of life. And we're going to engage not just our thoughts on this, we're going to pour our lives into this. We're going to invest in relationships, be with people, and then spur people on so that they too can multiply themselves and pour into other people's lives. So that's Jesus, the greatest teacher of all time. He is amazing, and it's incredible how he taught and how he invites us to be disciples. As we close, I want to give you 3 questions that are really 3 challenges for you. So here they are. Number 1, am I Jesus' disciple? Am I his disciple? This is the first question. In other words, have I chosen to truly apprentice under Jesus? It's one thing to say, I like him, or I like his teaching, or I think he was a good guy. It's another thing to say, my life is now coming up to follow him 24/7, to apprentice under him, to learn from him. And I would encourage you this. If you're not sure that you've ever come to a place in your life where you committed, where you said, I'm going to follow him, then I would encourage you to do that today. I think it's the greatest decision you can make with your life, to say, I'm a follower of Christ. And you might say, well, how do I do that? I mean, what does that even look like? Actually, Jesus defined it real clearly. He said this, if you want to follow me, put your trust in me. Or the term he would sometimes use is believe. Believe. It means to sort of throw yourself upon, to entrust yourself to say, Jesus, I'm entrusting my life into yours. And the Bible tells us that the moment we choose to do that, that's actually the command, the work that God invites every one of us into, the work of believing in him or entrusting ourselves to him, entrusting our lives to him. And when you do that, you'll find that his life becomes part of your life. Jesus actually came to die on the cross, pay for your sins and my sins so that he could offer freely. He rose again, and he offers freely to every single human being this gift of life, this invitation to come and be his disciple, come and be his student, come and be his follower. So that's the first question. Am I his disciple? Have you chosen to do that? The second question is this. If I am his disciple, what is my next step of obedience? What's my next step? And that's really the disciple's question. I think sometimes Christ followers get the idea that they become a Christ follower or they grow as a Christ follower, and at some point or other they've arrived. It's like at some point or other as disciples we think, well, I got to figure it out now. I've got the truth. I know what it is to follow Jesus, and I'm his follower, and there I am. But the reality is, being a student, being a disciple, that's something that you never arrive. That being a follower of Jesus means exactly that. You're following. That Jesus is in motion, and therefore I'm in motion too. And so a disciple is always asking the question, what's my next step of obedience? Where is God challenging me? Where is God inviting me to be transformed? I never want to get complacent as his disciple. So that's question 2 is if I am his disciple, what's my next step of obedience? And then finally, who am I teaching? Who am I influencing? You know, if every one of us was to just say, God, give me somebody to love, somebody to win, someone to disciple. And then we would take those people that we have an opportunity to influence, and we would commit the same spirit of love and truth and relationship that Jesus offers us, his disciples. So with those questions, we're going to close up the service, and we're going to take a few minutes to pray. And those of you who are in the room, I'll just invite you to stand. And online, up to you if you want to stand or remain seated. And we're going to sing a closing song too, but I want to just pray a prayer over you and invite you to commit yourself. So if you've never committed to be a disciple and you're saying, you know what, today's my day. I'm going to be a follower of Jesus. I want to just encourage you to pray a simple prayer. Just say, Jesus, I want to follow you. You gave your life for me. I'm going to give my life to you. I want what you did on the cross to be applied to my soul, to my heart, to my life. And just entrust yourself to him. And then that challenge of your next step of obedience, I want to encourage, if you are a follower of Jesus, I want to really push you on this today. Where is Jesus challenging you? Where is he inviting you into the adventure? Listen, he's out for your good. He's not trying to ruin your life. He wants to help you become all that he made you to be. His path is a path of joy. Where is God saying to you right now what your next step of obedience is? And just say, okay, God, I'm coming in. I'm coming as a learner. And maybe you would consider yourself a disciple of Jesus, but if you were to be totally honest, somewhere along the way, you stopped following. You stopped learning. You stopped growing. You stopped apprenticing yourself under Christ. And I would just say, man, today is the day to recommit yourself. To just say, Jesus, I am sorry. I got off track. And I'm coming back into line. And I'm going to follow you. So, Father, I just pray. I pray for each person joining this service. Lord, I pray that there would be a wonderful new making of disciples today. A new group of people who just say, you know what, I'm in. I'm in. I can hear God calling me to follow him, and today's my day to say yes. And then, God, I pray there would be a number who recommit. And God, some who find that next step of obedience and start pressing into that. And Father, I pray that you would make each of us teachers, influencers. Lord, to those around us, help us to teach your way. Jesus, you are magnificent. And I pray, God, that we would be able to see that in new ways, be inspired by it, walk a little more like you because of it today.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining on the message today. I hope you found it encouraging. And if today was your day, if you decided you're going all in for Jesus, if you became a Christian, then today is the best day of your life. So what's next? The next thing you need to do is tell somebody about it. So you can let us know by emailing us at connect@victoryMJ.com or fill out our connection card on our website, which is victorymj.com/connect. Now, if you would be so bold as to partner with us, you can do that simply by liking and sharing this on social media or wherever you consume this content. The other way you can partner with us is financially. You can donate securely on our church app or on our website or even e-transfer at admin@victorymj.com. And if you do any of those things, we would really appreciate it because it helps us continue to make content just like this to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. So thanks again for joining us, and I hope to see you all in the next one. God bless.